The late afternoon sun painted the San Antonio skyline in shades of amber and rose as George Strait's black Chevrolet Silverado pulled into the parking lot of Children's Memorial Hospital. The temperature had been climbing all day, typical for a Texas September, and the heat shimmered off the asphalt in waves. George removed his signature white resistal cowboy hat and ran his fingers through his graying hair, taking a moment to collect himself before stepping out of the truck. He had been performing for nearly 4 decades, playing to sold-out stadiums and arenas across the country, but hospital visits always affected him differently. There was something about seeing children fighting battles far bigger than themselves that put everything else into perspective. His manager, Tom Reynolds, had arranged this visit during a 3-day break between shows in Austin and Houston. George had insisted on coming alone, without cameras or press releases. This wasn't about publicity. It never was. The automatic doors slid open with a soft whoosh, releasing a burst of air conditioning that was a welcome relief from the oppressive heat outside. The lobby was decorated in cheerful colors, walls painted in soft yellows and blues, with murals of cartoon animals and clouds that seemed out of place given the serious nature of what happened within these walls. A volunteer at the front desk, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, looked up from her computer screen. "Good afternoon," she said warmly. "How can I help you today?" "I'm George Strait. I believe Tom Reynolds called ahead about a visit." Her eyes widened slightly in recognition, but she maintained her professional composure. "Of course, Mr. Strait. We've been expecting you. Let me page Dr. Patricia Coleman. She'll be your guide for the afternoon." While he waited, George observed the activity around him. A young couple sat in the corner, the mother's face buried in her husband's shoulder as he stroked her back in slow, comforting circles. An elderly man pushed a wheelchair carrying a small boy with a bandaged head, talking softly about what they would have for dinner. The antiseptic smell that permeated all hospitals mixed with something else. Coffee from the nearby cafeteria, perhaps, or the faint scent of flowers from the gift shop. Dr. Coleman appeared within minutes, a woman in her mid-40s wearing a white coat over scrubs decorated with musical notes. Her handshake was firm and confident. "Mr. Strait, it's an honor to meet you," she said. "I'm Dr. Coleman, head of pediatrics here. We're thrilled you could take time from your tour to visit our children. Many of them are big fans of yours, or their parents are. Music has an incredible healing power, especially for kids going through difficult treatments." "Please, call me George," he replied. "And it's my honor to be here. These kids are the real fighters." As they walked through the corridors toward the pediatric wing, Dr. Coleman explained the various cases he would encounter. Some children were recovering from surgeries, others undergoing chemotherapy, and a few were long-term residents dealing with chronic conditions. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a slightly harsh glow that made the colorful decorations on the walls seem even more necessary. A defiant splash of joy against clinical reality. "We have about 15 children who are well enough for visitors today," Dr. Coleman continued, her shoes squeaking softly against the polished linoleum floor. "Most are in the common room. We thought it would be easier than going room to room, but if you would prefer—" "The common room sounds perfect," George interrupted gently. "Let's give them something to smile about." The pediatric common room was larger than George expected, with windows spanning one entire wall that overlooked a small garden below. The room was filled with beanbag chairs in bright primary colors, shelves stacked with board games and books, and a television in the corner playing a muted cartoon. Approximately a dozen children of varying ages sat scattered throughout the space, some in wheelchairs, others with IV poles beside them. A few appearing almost healthy except for the hospital bracelets on their wrists. When George walked in, the room fell silent. A boy who looked about 12, his head wrapped in white bandages, was the first to speak. "Holy cow, that's George Strait," he exclaimed, his voice cracking with excitement. What followed was controlled chaos, as Dr. Coleman tried to maintain some semblance of order while the children crowded around. George spent the next hour talking to each child individually, signing autographs on everything from hospital gowns to cast plasters and listening to their stories. He learned about 7-year-old Jackson Miller's brave fight against leukemia, about 13-year-old Ashley Bennett's recovery from a severe car accident, about 10-year-old Christopher Hayes's upcoming heart surgery. But it was the girl in the corner who caught his attention. She sat alone by the window, her small frame silhouetted against the fading afternoon light. Her sandy blonde hair fell in loose waves past her shoulders, and she wore a light blue hospital gown with pink socks. What struck George most was that while all the other children had rushed toward him, she remained perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, her face turned toward the window with an expression of peaceful detachment. George excused himself from a conversation with Ashley about her upcoming birthday and made his way across the room. As he approached, he noticed the white cane leaning against the wall beside her chair and the slight milky quality of her eyes that indicated blindness. "Mind if I sit here?" George asked softly, pulling up a chair beside her. The girl turned her head in his direction, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "You're George Strait," she stated matter-of-factly. "I recognized your voice. My dad used to play your music all the time in his truck." "Used to?" George noted the past tense, but decided not to press. "Well, I hope it was good music to drive to. What's your name, sweetheart?" "Lily Anderson. I'm 9 years old, and I've been blind for 2 years, 4 months, and 16 days. She recited the information with the precision of someone who had answered these questions many times before. "I know what you're thinking. You're wondering what happened." George leaned back in his chair, studying her profile. Despite her young age, there was a maturity in her bearing that spoke of experiences no child should have to endure. "Only if you want to tell me, Lily." She was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the armrest of her chair. Outside the window, a bird landed on the garden wall, but of course, she couldn't see it. "Car accident," she finally said, her voice steady. "My dad died. I lost my sight. Mom says we're the unlucky, lucky ones. Unlucky to have the accident, lucky to have survived. I'm not sure which part is supposed to make me feel better." The honesty of her statement hit George in the chest. He had met many children in hospitals over the years, and they usually fell into 2 categories: those who were determinedly cheerful, putting on brave faces for the adults around them, and those who were withdrawn and frightened. Lily seemed to be neither. She was simply honest, presenting her reality without embellishment or self-pity. "That's a wise way to look at it," George said carefully, "and a hard thing to carry. How long have you been in the hospital this time?" "Just a week. I get infections sometimes. Mom worries." Lily turned her face more fully toward him, and George could see the intelligence and awareness in her expression, despite her sightless eyes. "Dr. Coleman told me you were coming. She said you sing country music. Dad loved country music. He said it told the truth about life. Your dad sounds like he was a smart man." "He was." Lily's smile was bittersweet. "He used to sing to me before bed. Not very well, but I didn't care. After the accident, when I first woke up in the hospital and couldn't see anymore, I thought maybe, if I listened hard enough to music, I could see it in my head. Does that sound weird?" "Not at all," George assured her. "Music paints pictures, sometimes better than our eyes can. Do you still listen to music? To your dad's favorites?" Lily nodded enthusiastically, the first real animation George had seen from her. All the time. Mom got me headphones and a special music player I can use by myself. I listen to your songs too. Amarillo by Morning is my favorite. When you sing about the rodeo and the highway, I can see it all. The dust, the fences, the sunset. It's like I'm not blind when I'm listening. George felt a lump forming in his throat. Throughout his career, people had told him what his music meant to them. But hearing it from this brave little girl carried a different weight. You know what, Lily? That might be the best compliment anyone's ever given me about my music. He paused, an idea forming. Do you like to sing? Her face lit up. I love it, but I'm not very good. Mom says I'm tone deaf, but she laughs when she says it. So I think she's kidding. Mostly. I doubt that very much. Would you sing something for me? Lily hesitated, suddenly shy. Here, in front of everyone. They're all busy with Dr. Coleman looking at some new games that just got donated. It's just you and me. Come on, give it a try. Sing me a verse of Amarillo by Morning. George watched as Lily took a deep breath, her small shoulders rising and falling. Then, in a voice that was surprisingly clear and sweet, she began to sing. She had the melody right, though her pitch wavered occasionally, and her timing was off in places. But there was something in the way she sang, a genuine emotion, a connection to the words that went beyond technical perfection. When she finished, she bit her lip nervously. Was it terrible? It was beautiful, George said honestly. You've got something special, Lily, a real feeling for the music. With some training, you could be something amazing. Really? Her whole face transformed with hope, and George saw a glimpse of the carefree child she should have been. I asked Mom if I could take music lessons, but she said we couldn't afford it. She works 2 jobs already. I told her it's okay. I can just listen and teach myself. Before George could respond, a voice cut through the room like a knife through butter. Lily Anderson. What did I tell you about bothering people? George turned to see a woman striding toward them, her expression a mixture of exhaustion and barely controlled anxiety. She was in her early 30s, with the same sandy blonde hair as her daughter, though hers was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore navy blue scrubs with Rebecca Anderson, RN, embroidered on the pocket, and there were dark circles under her blue eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. Her tennis shoes were worn at the heels, and her hands, George noticed, bore the dry, cracked skin of someone who washed them dozens of times a day. Mom! Lily's face fell. I wasn't bothering anyone. Mr. Strait asked me to sing. Rebecca stopped a few feet away, her jaw tight. Up close, George could see the fine lines around her eyes and mouth that made her look older than she probably was. She crossed her arms over her chest in a defensive posture. I'm sure Mr. Strait was just being polite, honey. Her voice softened when she addressed her daughter, but hardened again when she looked at George. I'm sorry if my daughter imposed on your time. She sometimes forgets that people have places to be. George stood, extending his hand. George Strait. And Lily wasn't imposing at all. She's got a real talent for music. You should be proud. Rebecca looked at his extended hand for a long moment before shaking it briefly, her grip perfunctory. Rebecca Anderson, Lily's mother, and I am proud of her. But I also know the difference between kindness and charity, Mr. Strait. You don't need to pretend my daughter's singing is anything special. She's been through enough without people feeding her false hopes. The words were sharp, delivered with a bitterness that seemed out of proportion to the situation. George saw Lily's face crumble, her earlier joy extinguished like a candle in the wind. Mom, Lily whispered, her voice breaking. He wasn't. Lily, go wait by the nurse's station. We're leaving in 5 minutes. Rebecca's tone left no room for argument. Lily stood slowly, reaching for her cane with practiced movements. As she passed her mother, Rebecca's hand briefly touched her daughter's shoulder, the only sign of tenderness in her otherwise rigid demeanor. George watched Lily make her way across the room, her cane tapping softly against the floor, her shoulders hunched in defeat. When Lily was out of earshot, George turned back to Rebecca. "Mrs. Anderson, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I wasn't being polite. Your daughter really does have—" "Please don't," Rebecca interrupted, holding up a hand. "I know you mean well. Everyone means well. But I've been dealing with well-meaning people for 2 years now, and I've learned that good intentions don't pay the bills or bring back what we've lost. Lily doesn't need another person telling her she's special just to feel better about themselves. She needs stability. She needs reality. She needs her mother to protect her from disappointment. I understand you're protecting your daughter, but do you?" Rebecca's voice rose slightly before she caught herself, glancing around to make sure they weren't attracting attention. When she continued, her voice was lower, but no less intense. "Do you understand what it's like to watch your husband die in your arms while your daughter screams in the back seat? Do you understand what it's like to be told your child will never see again? Do you understand what it's like to work 16-hour days just to keep the lights on and the medical bills from drowning you?" George opened his mouth to respond, but Rebecca wasn't finished. "I didn't think so. So please, Mr. Strait, enjoy your hospital visit. Take your pictures for your publicist. Feel good about making sick kids smile. But leave my daughter out of it. We don't need your pity or your empty promises." With that, she turned and walked away, her back straight and her footsteps quick and purposeful. George stood there, stunned by the ferocity of her response. Dr. Coleman approached him cautiously. "I'm sorry about that," she said quietly. She's been through a lot. She's a wonderful nurse, but she's built walls around herself and Lily that are almost impossible to penetrate. She sees kindness as pity and refuses any help that might make her feel like she can't provide for her daughter on her own." George watched through the window as Rebecca collected Lily from the nurse's station, their heads bent together in conversation. Even from this distance, he could see the love between them, in the way Rebecca's hand rested protectively on Lily's shoulder, in the way Lily leaned slightly into her mother's side. "What happened to them?" George asked. "I mean, I know about the accident, but—" Dr. Coleman sighed, motioning for George to follow her to a quieter corner of the room. David Anderson was a mechanic. Good man, by all accounts. 3 years ago, they were driving home from a family trip when a drunk driver ran a red light. David died at the scene. Lily was in the back seat, and the impact caused severe trauma to her optic nerves. The doctors tried everything, but the damage was irreversible. She paused, her expression troubled. Rebecca was a stay-at-home mom at the time. After the accident, she went back to school to become a nurse, studying while taking care of a traumatized, newly blind child. She works day shifts at the county hospital and night shifts here 2 or 3 times a week. The insurance money ran out a year ago. They live in a small apartment in a rough part of town because it's all she can afford. And through it all, she's refused help from anyone. Church groups, disability services, even her own family. She says she won't be anyone's charity case. George's jaw tightened. What about Lily's medical care? Those infections she mentioned? Lily has a compromised immune system, likely stress-related. She gets infections regularly, and each one requires hospitalization and antibiotics. Rebecca gets a staff discount on Lily's care since she works here, but even with that, the medical bills are crushing. I know for a fact she hasn't bought new clothes for herself in over a year. Everything goes to Lily. And the music lessons Lily mentioned wanting? Dr. Coleman smiled sadly. Lily begs for them constantly. Rebecca looked into it once, but even the cheapest lessons were more than their budget could handle. She told Lily it wasn't possible right now, but that someday, when things were better. I think Lily stopped believing in someday. George looked back toward the window. Rebecca and Lily were gone now, disappeared into the maze of hospital corridors. But Lily's voice still echoed in his mind, sweet and hopeful and full of untapped potential. And Rebecca's words cut deep, not because they were cruel, but because they came from a place of profound pain and pride. "Dr. Coleman," George said slowly, an idea crystallizing in his mind. "I want to help them, not as charity, but there has to be a way." Dr. Coleman looked at him sympathetically. "I appreciate that, truly. But Rebecca is one of the most stubborn people I've ever met. She'll see any offer of help as pity, and she'll reject it out of hand. I've tried. The hospital administrator has tried. Even some of the other nurses who want to help have tried. She shuts everyone down. Then I'll have to find a way she can't refuse," George said, determination settling over him like a familiar coat. "That little girl deserves a chance to explore her gift, and her mother deserves to not carry the world on her shoulders alone." "I admire your optimism," Dr. Coleman said gently. "But I've seen Rebecca Anderson turn down help from people far more persistent than you. She's protecting the only thing she has left, her pride, and her belief that she can provide for her daughter without depending on anyone." George was quiet for a moment, thinking. The afternoon sun had sunk lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the common room. The other children were starting to leave, parents and guardians collecting them for dinner or bedtime routines. "Pride isn't a bad thing," he finally said. "Sometimes it's the only thing that keeps us standing when everything else tries to knock us down. But there's a difference between healthy pride and pride that isolates you from the people who genuinely want to help. Rebecca Anderson is drowning, and she won't let anyone throw her a rope because she thinks accepting it makes her weak. But it doesn't. It makes her human." Dr. Coleman studied him for a long moment. "You really care about this, don't you? This isn't just about feeling good or getting a story to tell." "No," George said firmly. "It's not. I've been blessed with a career that's given me more than I ever dreamed of. I've got the means to make a real difference in that little girl's life. And maybe, just maybe, in her mother's too. I just need to figure out how to do it in a way that Rebecca won't see as an insult." "Well," Dr. Coleman said thoughtfully, "if anyone can crack that particular nut, I suppose it might be someone with your resources and determination. But I'm warning you, George, Rebecca is like a mama bear protecting her cub. She will fight you every step of the way." "Then it's a good thing I grew up on a ranch," George said with a slight smile. "I know a thing or two about stubborn creatures who need help, whether they want to admit it or not." As George prepared to leave the hospital, signing a few more autographs and saying goodbye to the children, his mind was already working through possibilities. He thought about Lily's clear, sweet voice singing "Amarillo by Morning," about the way her whole face had lit up when he'd praised her singing. He thought about Rebecca's fierce, desperate love for her daughter, about the exhaustion etched into her features, about the pride that was both her strength and her prison. The sun was setting as George walked back to his truck, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple. San Antonio was beginning its transition from day to night, streetlights flickering on, traffic picking up as people headed home from work. Somewhere in this city, Rebecca Anderson was probably driving Lily back to their small apartment, maybe stopping for fast food because she was too tired to cook after a long shift. Somewhere in this city, a talented little girl was listening to music in the dark, seeing pictures that her eyes could no longer show her. George started his truck and sat for a moment. the engine idling, the air conditioning gradually cooling the interior. Tom Reynolds would call soon, asking about the visit, ready to update him on the next show. But George's mind wasn't on the tour anymore. It was on a 9-year-old girl with a gift she might never get to develop, and a mother too proud to accept the help that could change both their lives. "Well, David Anderson," George said quietly to the empty truck, addressing the man he'd never met who used to play his music and sing to his daughter. "Your girls need help, whether they know it or not, and I'm going to figure out a way to give it to them. I promise you that." He pulled out of the parking lot and merged into traffic, the city lights beginning to glow against the darkening sky. Tomorrow, he had a show in Houston, but after that, he was coming back to San Antonio. And this time, he was bringing a plan that even Rebecca Anderson's formidable pride couldn't refuse. At least, he hoped so. 3 days later, George stood in the hallway outside Rebecca Anderson's apartment, holding a guitar case and questioning every decision that had led him to this moment. The building was exactly as Dr. Coleman had described. A tired 3-story walk-up in a neighborhood where the streetlights flickered, and most of the cars parked along the curb had seen better decades. The hallway smelled of cooking oil and mildew, and the carpet was worn down to its backing in patches. Apartment 2C. George had gotten the address from hospital records, a favor from Dr. Coleman that she'd granted reluctantly, making him promise he wouldn't make things worse for Rebecca or Lily. He'd spent the Houston show distracted, working through different approaches in his mind during sound check, barely tasting his dinner afterward. Tom Reynolds had noticed, asking pointed questions that George had deflected with vague answers about inspiration for new songs. Before he could second-guess himself further, George knocked on the door. 3 firm raps that echoed in the narrow hallway. Silence. Then footsteps, light and quick. The door opened a crack, held by a chain lock, and Lily's face appeared in the gap. "Who's there?" she asked, her voice cautious. "It's George Strait, Lily, from the hospital." The door closed briefly as she worked the chain free, then swung open fully. Lily stood in the doorway wearing faded jeans and a purple t-shirt, her hair pulled back in 2 braids. Her face broke into a genuine smile. "Mr. Strait, what are you doing here? Did Mom know you were coming?" Her smile faltered. "She's not going to be happy if she didn't." "I'm aware," George admitted. "Is she home?" "She's sleeping. She worked a double shift and just got home 2 hours ago. I'm supposed to be quiet." Lily lowered her voice conspiratorially. "But I was just listening to music anyway. Same thing I always do." George glanced past her into the apartment. It was small and Spartan, with furniture that looked salvaged from thrift stores or curbsides. But it was scrupulously clean, with everything organized in a way that would make it easy for Lily to navigate. A small television sat on a wooden crate. A couch with mismatched cushions faced it. Photos lined one wall. A younger Rebecca with a broad-shouldered man who must have been David, the 3 of them happy and whole in various poses and locations. "Lily, who's at the door?" Rebecca's voice came from a bedroom down the short hallway, thick with sleep and instant suspicion. "It's Mr. Strait, Mom," Lily called back, then whispered to George, "You're in trouble now." George heard movement from the bedroom, the creak of bed springs, the sound of feet hitting the floor. Rebecca appeared moments later, wearing sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt, her hair tangled from sleep. The moment she saw George, her expression hardened. "How did you get this address?" she demanded, moving protectively between George and Lily. "Did you follow us?" "Because that's—" "Dr. Coleman gave it to me," George said quickly, holding up his hands in a gesture of peace. "I asked her to. I know this is unexpected, and I know you probably want me gone, but I'm asking you to give me 5 minutes to explain why I'm here." Rebecca's eyes narrowed. 5 minutes for you to assuage your guilt about being rich and famous while people like us struggle? No thanks. I thought I made myself clear at the hospital. We don't need your help. Mom, Lily said softly. Maybe we should. Lily, go to your room. But now. The sharpness in Rebecca's voice made Lily flinch. She turned and made her way down the hallway, her cane tapping softly. George heard a door close, then silence. Rebecca turned her full attention to George, and he could see the exhaustion in every line of her face, the way she held herself rigid, as if it were the only thing keeping her from collapsing. "You had no right to come here," she said, her voice low and tight. "You had no right to get my address from hospital records. That's a violation of my privacy. I could report you. I could." "You could," George agreed. "And you'd be within your rights. But I'm hoping you won't. Because I'm not here to make your life harder, Rebecca. I'm here because I can't stop thinking about your daughter's voice and the fact that she might never get to develop that gift because of circumstances beyond her control. Her circumstances are none of your concern. Maybe not. But talent like hers is rare, and it deserves to be nurtured. I've been in this business for 40 years, Rebecca. I've heard thousands of people sing. Most of them were technically perfect, but very few of them had what Lily has, a genuine connection to the music, an ability to make you feel something. That's not something you can teach. That's something you're born with." Rebecca crossed her arms, her jaw set. "And what exactly are you proposing? Private music lessons? A recording contract for a 9-year-old blind girl? Maybe a spot opening for you on tour so you can show the world how generous you are?" The bitterness in her words was palpable, each one designed to push him away. But George saw through it to the fear underneath. The fear of false hope, of disappointment, of owing anyone anything. "Actually," George said, setting the guitar case down and opening it, "I was thinking that we could start simpler than that. I brought this for Lily." Inside the case was a Taylor guitar, not his most expensive model, but a beautiful instrument nonetheless, with a warm, rich tone that would be perfect for a young learner. But that wasn't what made it special. George had spent 2 days working with a luthier in Houston to make modifications. The frets had been marked with small tactile dots, spaced to help Lily find her finger positions. The tuning pegs had been labeled in Braille. The body of the guitar had a slightly textured finish that would help her orient the instrument properly. Rebecca stared at the guitar, her expression unreadable. "You're giving my daughter a guitar." "I'm giving her a chance to learn," George corrected. "This is specially adapted for someone who's blind. And before you say anything about charity, this isn't. This is an investment in someone with genuine talent. I want to teach her to play. Free of charge, yes, but not because I pity her. Because I recognize something special when I see it. You want to teach her." Rebecca's voice was flat, disbelieving. "You're one of the most successful country musicians in history. You tour constantly. You have 1,000,000 demands on your time, and you want to spend that time teaching a 9-year-old blind girl to play guitar. Do you understand how ridiculous that sounds?" "I understand how it sounds," George said patiently. "But I'm between tours for the next 2 months. I live about an hour from here, and I have the time, the expertise, and the desire to help your daughter discover her potential. All I'm asking is that you let me try." "Why?" The single word came out sharp as a blade. "Why do you care? You met Lily for all of 15 minutes. You don't know her. You don't know us. So why would you possibly go to all this trouble for a child you'll forget about the moment you drive away from here?" George was quiet for a moment, considering his answer carefully. He could tell her about his own daughter, about how much he valued the opportunities she'd been given, He could talk about giving back to the community that had supported his career. He could cite a dozen noble reasons that would all be true, but wouldn't touch the real answer. "Because," he said finally, meeting Rebecca's eyes directly, "I heard your daughter sing, and in that moment, I heard your late husband's love for music living on in her. I heard joy despite pain. I heard hope despite loss. And I thought about how music has been the greatest gift of my life, and how tragic it would be if someone with Lily's natural talent never got the chance to develop it just because life dealt her an unfair hand." Something flickered in Rebecca's eyes. Pain, maybe? Or unwilling recognition? She looked away, blinking hard. "David would have loved this," she said quietly, almost to herself. "He would have been over the moon. He used to talk about teaching her guitar someday, when she was old enough. He had this old beat-up acoustic that he'd had since high school. It was destroyed in the accident." "I'm not trying to replace your husband," George said gently. "No one could do that. But maybe I can honor his memory by helping his daughter with something he would have wanted for her." Rebecca was silent for a long moment, her arms still crossed, her body language still defensive. But George could see the internal struggle playing out on her face. Pride warring with love. Stubbornness battling with the desire to give her daughter something precious. "If I say yes," she said slowly, each word pulled from her like teeth, "it's not because we need charity. It's because Lily deserves opportunities. And I won't let my pride stand in the way of that. But there are conditions. Name them. No press, no publicity, no heartwarming stories about the famous country star helping the poor blind girl. This stays private. Or it doesn't happen at all." "Agreed," George said immediately. This was never about publicity. "Second, if Lily wants to stop at any time, for any reason, we stop. No pressure, no guilt trips about the expensive guitar or your valuable time. Her well-being comes first." "Absolutely." "Third, this doesn't make us friends. You're not fixing us. You're not saving us. You're teaching my daughter to play guitar. That's all. I don't want your pity, your advice about my life, or your judgment about my choices." The words stung, but George understood the defense mechanism behind them. Rebecca had been surviving on her own terms for so long that accepting help felt like admitting defeat. "Fair enough," he said. "Though I have to tell you, I don't pity you, Rebecca. I respect the hell out of what you've done for your daughter. That's not pity. That's admiration." Rebecca looked startled, as if the concept of someone admiring her was foreign. "Yeah, well, respect doesn't pay the bills. Maybe not, but it's still true." For the first time since opening the door, Rebecca's defensive posture softened slightly. She uncrossed her arms, though her expression remained guarded. "When would these lessons happen?" she asked, the question itself an acknowledgement that she was considering the offer. "Whenever works for your schedule. I'm flexible for the next 2 months. After that, I'll be back on tour, but we could potentially do video lessons if Lily's interested in continuing. She works with a tutor 3 times a week for her regular schooling. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays are free. Tuesdays work for me. Say, 2 o'clock? I could come here. Or if you prefer, Lily could come to my place. I have a home studio that's quiet and comfortable for teaching." Rebecca's eyes narrowed again. "I don't let my daughter go to strange men's houses." "Understandable. Here is fine. Or we could meet somewhere public if that makes you more comfortable. A music store with practice rooms, maybe." "Here," Rebecca decided, "where I can supervise. And I'll be in the next room the entire time." That's completely reasonable. Lily's bedroom door opened, and she emerged into the hallway, her expression hopeful and anxious. "Are you fighting about me?" "Lily, I told you to stay in your room," Rebecca said. But there was no real heat in her words. "I know. but I could hear you talking about lessons and schedules, and I wanted to know if—" She trailed off, biting her lip. "Am I getting to learn guitar?" Rebecca looked at her daughter, and George saw the love and fear and desperate hope all warring on her face. Finally, she sighed, the sound of someone surrendering to something both wanted and dreaded. "Yes," she said. "Mr. Strait is going to teach you to play. But you have to promise me something, Lily. You have to promise that if it gets too hard, or if you don't like it, or if you just want to stop for any reason, you'll tell me. Okay?" Lily's face transformed, radiant with joy. "I promise. Oh my gosh, I promise. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Mr. Strait." She launched herself toward George's voice, and he caught her in a hug, feeling her small frame trembling with excitement. "You're welcome, sweetheart. But you should thank your mom. She's the one who's making this possible." Lily turned and wrapped her arms around Rebecca's waist. "Thank you, Mommy. This is the best thing ever. I'm going to work so hard. I promise." Rebecca's arms came around her daughter, holding her tightly. When she looked at George over Lily's head, her eyes were bright with unshed tears, and her expression was a complex mixture of gratitude, resentment, and fear. "Tuesday at 2, she said. "Don't be late. And Mr. Strait, if you hurt her, if you disappoint her, if you make promises you don't keep, I will make sure you regret it. I don't care how famous you are." "I believe you," George said sincerely, "and I won't. You have my word." He left shortly after, leaving the guitar with Lily, who was already running her fingers over the braille labels and textured surfaces, her face alight with wonder. As he walked down the hallway toward the stairs, he could hear Lily's excited chatter and Rebecca's quieter responses, the sound of a mother trying to protect her child from disappointment while simultaneously allowing her to hope. The evening air was cooler than it had been during the day, carrying the scent of charcoal grills and cut grass from somewhere nearby. Children played in a small courtyard between buildings, their shouts and laughter echoing off the concrete walls. An elderly woman watered plants on her balcony, and a young couple argued in Spanish in a parked car. George sat in his truck for a moment before starting the engine, thinking about what he'd just committed to. Teaching was one thing, but navigating Rebecca Anderson's fierce protectiveness and wounded pride would be something else entirely. She had agreed to the lessons, but she'd made it clear that she was granting permission grudgingly, that she saw this as a necessary evil rather than a gift. His phone buzzed. Tom Reynolds. "Where are you?" his manager asked without preamble. "You were supposed to call me an hour ago." "Got sidetracked. Sorry." "Sidetracked how? Please tell me you're not getting into trouble. We've got the Oklahoma shows coming up, and I need you focused." "I'm focused," George assured him. "Just had something personal to take care of." "Personal?" Tom's voice was skeptical. "This wouldn't have anything to do with that hospital visit in San Antonio, would it?" "Because I got a weird call from Dr. Coleman asking about your schedule for the next 2 months." George sighed. "I'm going to be in San Antonio on Tuesdays for a while. Personal project. Nothing that will interfere with the tour schedule." "George," Tom's voice took on a warning tone. "What are you doing? Teaching a kid to play guitar? Just a kid? Or is this about that blind girl and her mother who apparently tore you a new one at the hospital?" News traveled fast, apparently. "Doctor, Coleman tell you that?" She mentioned it. "Said you seemed unusually affected by the encounter. So let me guess. You've decided to play hero. And now you're tangled up with a woman who clearly doesn't want your help, and a child who's going to break your heart when this inevitably gets complicated. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. George, I know you mean well, but you can't fix everyone's problems. And you especially can't fix problems for people who don't want to be fixed. "I'm not trying to fix anyone's problems," George said, though even as he said it, he wondered if it was true. "I'm just teaching a talented kid to play guitar. That's all." "Uh-huh. And when this all blows up in your face, don't say I didn't warn you." After hanging up, George sat in the growing darkness, thinking about Tom's words. Maybe his manager was right. Maybe he was getting in over his head. But when he closed his eyes, he saw Lily's face lighting up at the prospect of learning music, heard her sweet voice singing his song, felt the weight of Rebecca's desperate pride and fierce love for her daughter. Some things were worth the risk of getting hurt. Some things mattered more than playing it safe. Tuesday couldn't come fast enough. The first lesson was a disaster. George arrived at 2 o'clock exactly, carrying his own guitar and a beginner's instruction book he'd adapted with notes in Braille. Rebecca opened the door with Lily practically vibrating with excitement beside her. "Remember what we talked about?" Rebecca said to Lily. "Mr. Strait is taking time out of his busy schedule to do this. So you're going to listen, follow instructions, and work hard. Understood?" "Understood!" Lily bounced on her toes. "Can we start now? Please?" The apartment was even more obviously impoverished in the harsh afternoon light. George noticed things he'd missed during his evening visit. The way the paint was peeling in one corner of the ceiling, the mismatched dishes visible through the kitchen doorway, the fact that there was no air conditioning, just a small fan struggling to move the warm air around. Rebecca showed him to the living room, where she'd arranged 2 chairs facing each other. "I'll be in the kitchen," she said, her tone making it clear that in the kitchen meant watching your every move. "Lily, you have your water?" "Yes, Mom." "And your inhaler is on the table if you need it." "I know, Mom." "Okay. Well, I'll be right here if you need anything." Rebecca retreated to the kitchen, and George heard the sound of cabinets opening and closing, the water running, busy work to keep her hands occupied while her ears stayed trained on the living room. George sat down across from Lily, who was already holding her new guitar with a mixture of reverence and uncertainty. "All right, let's start with the basics," he said. "First thing we need to do is make sure you're holding it correctly. The guitar should rest on your right leg if you're right-handed, with the neck pointing to your left." "I'm left-handed," Lily said. George paused. In all his planning, he hadn't thought to ask about that. "Okay, no problem. We can restring the guitar for left-handed playing, or you can learn right-handed. A lot of left-handed players do it that way. Which is better? Whatever feels more natural to you. Why don't we try it both ways and see?" They spent the next 20 minutes experimenting with different positions and orientations, with Lily growing increasingly frustrated as nothing felt quite right. The guitar was too big for her small frame. Her fingers couldn't reach the frets properly. And without being able to see where her hands were supposed to go, she was relying entirely on touch and George's verbal instructions, which proved inadequate for complex spatial positioning. "I can't do it," she finally said, tears of frustration in her voice. "It's too hard." From the kitchen, George heard the sound of movement, Rebecca starting to intervene. He held up a hand, though of course Lily couldn't see it. "Hey," he said gently, "it's supposed to be hard at first. Everyone struggles with holding a guitar correctly when they're learning. And you've got the added challenge of not being able to see what you're doing. But that doesn't mean you can't learn. It just means we need to figure out the best way to teach you." "But you said I had talent," Lily said miserably. "Talented people aren't supposed to be this bad. Talent and skill are 2 different things. You've got the talent, the ear, the feeling for music. But skill takes practice and patience. And probably some modifications to our approach that I didn't think about beforehand." Rebecca appeared in the doorway, her arms crossed. "Maybe this isn't going to work out." "We've barely started," George protested, "and she's already crying." I told you, if it's too much for her, we stop. I'm not crying because it's too much, Lily said, wiping at her eyes. I'm crying because I want to do it right, and I can't figure out how. George looked at Rebecca, then at Lily, then at the guitar that he'd thought would be the perfect tool, but was clearly presenting challenges he hadn't anticipated. Give me a few days, he said. Let me do some research, talk to some people who teach music to visually impaired students. I'll come back next Tuesday with a better plan. You're giving up? Rebecca's voice held a note of what might have been vindication. No, I'm adapting. There's a difference. Lily, are you willing to try again next week if I can figure out a better way to teach you? Lily nodded, her expression hopeful despite the tears. Yes, I really want to learn, Mr. Strait. I need help figuring out how. Then that's what we'll do. I'll see you next Tuesday, okay? After he left, George sat in his truck and called every music teacher he knew, asking for advice about teaching guitar to a blind student. By the end of the day, he had a list of techniques, resources, and modifications to try. He ordered a smaller guitar that would fit Lily's frame better. He bought tactile stickers and specialized teaching tools designed for visually impaired musicians. He watched videos and read articles and absorbed everything he could about alternative teaching methods. When Tuesday came around again, he arrived with an arsenal of new approaches. And this time, when Lily struggled to position her fingers correctly, he had a solution. Placing his hands over hers, gently guiding them to the right spots, while describing the feeling she should be aiming for. The first fret should feel like this, he said, pressing her finger down until it made clear contact with the string. Can you feel that? The resistance of the string, the way it digs into your fingertips slightly? Yes, Lily said, concentration fierce on her face. That's what you're aiming for every time. Not too hard, not too soft. Just enough pressure to make a clean sound. They worked through the basics slowly, with George using touch and verbal cues to help Lily understand what she couldn't see. And gradually, frustratingly, slowly but steadily, she began to improve. Rebecca watched from the kitchen, and though she never said anything encouraging, George noticed that over the weeks, her posture became slightly less rigid, her expression slightly less hostile. She still didn't trust him. That much was clear. But she was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, he was going to keep his promises. 6 weeks into the lessons, George arrived at the apartment to find Rebecca waiting outside in the hallway, her arms crossed and her expression troubled. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. "Before you go in." George's stomach sank. "Is Lily okay?" "She's fine, physically, but emotionally." Rebecca ran a hand through her hair, a gesture of exhaustion and frustration. "She's getting too attached. To the guitar, to the lessons, to you. And I'm worried about what happens when this ends." "What do you mean, when this ends?" "Don't play dumb. You're going back on tour soon. These Tuesday lessons will stop, and Lily will be devastated. She talks about you constantly. Mr. Strait says this. Mr. Strait taught me that. She's building you up into something you're not, a permanent fixture in her life. And when you leave, it's going to break her heart." George leaned against the hallway wall, processing her words. "I told you from the beginning that we could continue lessons via video when I'm touring. That's still an option." "Is it? Really? Or is that something you said in the moment that seemed like a good idea, but that you'll forget about once you're back to your real life?" Rebecca's voice was sharp, with the cynicism of someone who'd been disappointed too many times. "Because here's what I've learned, Mr. Strait. People make promises they can't keep all the time. They mean well in the moment, but when it comes down to it, they're too busy, too distracted, too focused on their own lives to follow through. And I can't let Lily be another casualty of good intentions. Is that what happened with your family? George asked quietly. They promised to help and didn't? Rebecca's jaw tightened. That's none of your business. Maybe not. But I'm getting the feeling that your distrust of me has less to do with who I am and more to do with who disappointed you before. For a moment, George thought she might actually open up. Her expression flickered, pain and anger, and something that might have been longing for someone to prove her wrong. But then her walls went back up, solid as concrete. My past doesn't change the facts. You're a famous musician with a demanding career. My daughter is a 9-year-old girl who's already lost too much. When you leave, she's going to be hurt, and I'm her mother. It's my job to protect her from that. By taking away something that makes her happy, something she's good at, by managing her expectations, by making sure she understands that nothing is permanent, that people leave, that you can't count on anyone but yourself. George felt a surge of frustration. That's a hell of a lesson to teach a child, and a lonely way to live. It's realistic, and reality is better than false hope. They stood in the hallway, at an impasse. From inside the apartment, George could hear Lily practicing the chord progression he'd taught her last week, her fingers stumbling occasionally, but gaining confidence with each repetition. The sound of her effort and improvement was a reminder of what was at stake. "Rebecca," George said carefully, "I understand why you're scared, but you're so focused on protecting Lily from potential hurt that you're not seeing the actual harm you might cause by taking this away from her. She's thriving. She's learning. She's excited about something in a way I'm guessing she hasn't been in a long time. Is your fear really worth destroying that? My fear is based on experience, on watching people walk away when things get hard or inconvenient, on learning that promises mean nothing without follow-through. Then let me prove to you that I'm different. Let me show you that I'll keep my promises even when it's inconvenient. But you have to give me the chance to do that instead of assuming I'll fail before I've even tried." Rebecca was quiet, her expression warring between skepticism and something that might have been hope. Inside, Lily had stopped playing and was calling out, "Mom, is Mr. Strait here?" I heard voices. Rebecca closed her eyes briefly, then opened them with visible resolve. "2 more lessons," she said. "You have 2 more Tuesdays before you leave for Oklahoma. After that, we'll reassess. If you're serious about continuing via video, you can prove it then. But if you disappear, if you get busy and forget about us, I don't want to hear excuses. We'll just be done. Clean break." "That's fair," George agreed, though he chafed at the idea that he needed to prove himself. "But Rebecca, I'm going to ask you to do something too. I'm going to ask you to consider the possibility that I'm exactly who I say I am. Someone who genuinely cares about your daughter's development and has the means and desire to help her. Not because I want something from you, not because I'm trying to fix you, but because it's the right thing to do, and I'm in a position to do it." Rebecca didn't answer, just opened the apartment door and called out, "He's here, Lily, and he's ready to hear what you've been practicing." The lesson that followed was one of their best. Lily had been working hard on her chord transitions, and it showed. Her fingers found the positions more quickly now, with less hesitation. Her strumming was still a bit uneven, but she was developing rhythm and timing. Most impressively, she'd started to understand the relationship between the notes, how they worked together to create harmony. "That was excellent," George said, when she'd finished playing through a simple song they'd been working on. "You've really been practicing." Lily beamed. "Every day. Sometimes Mom has to tell me to stop because my fingers hurt." Lily held up her left hand, showing the developing calluses on her fingertips. "But she says that's normal for guitar players." George glanced toward the kitchen where Rebecca was pretending to be absorbed in washing dishes. Your mom's right. Those calluses mean you're doing it right. Eventually, your fingertips will toughen up enough that it won't hurt anymore. Mr. Strait, Lily said, her voice suddenly uncertain. Mom says you're leaving soon, for your tour. George shot a look toward Rebecca's back, wondering how much Lily had overheard from the hallway conversation. That's true. But like I told your mom, we can keep doing lessons through video calls. Technology's pretty amazing these days, but it won't be the same. Lily's fingers stilled on the guitar strings. What if the connection is bad, and I can't hear you? What if I do something wrong and you can't fix it because you're not here to show me? The vulnerability in her voice cut through George like a knife. This was exactly what Rebecca had been worried about. Lily building up expectations that might lead to disappointment. Lily, he said gently, change is hard. I get that. But sometimes we have to adapt to new situations. And that doesn't mean things will be worse. Just different. And I promise you, whether I'm here in person or on a video screen, I'm still going to be your teacher. I'm still going to help you learn and grow as a musician. You promise? Like, really promise? Not the kind of promise grown-ups make and then forget about? George heard Rebecca's sharp intake of breath from the kitchen. He chose his next words carefully, knowing that both Anderson women were hanging on them. I really promise, Lily. And I'll tell you something else. I've been thinking about your progress, and I believe you're ready for something more challenging. How would you feel about learning to write your own music? Simple stuff at first, but your own songs, your own melodies. Lily's face lit up like a Christmas tree. Really? I could write songs? Like real songs? Like real songs. You've got a good ear for melody, and you're developing the technical skills you need. Why not put them together and create something that's uniquely yours? Oh my gosh, that would be amazing! Mom, did you hear? Mr. Strait thinks I can write songs. Rebecca appeared in the doorway, drying her hands on a dish towel. Her expression was complicated, pleased for her daughter's excitement, but still guarded, still waiting for the other shoe to drop. I heard, she said. That's wonderful, baby. But remember, it takes time to learn something like that. Don't expect to write a hit song tomorrow. I know, Mom, but still, writing my own songs, maybe I could write one about Dad. Would that be okay? Rebecca's composure cracked for just a moment, pain flashing across her features. Of course that would be okay. Your dad would love that. After the lesson ended and George was packing up his guitar, Rebecca walked him to the door while Lily practiced in her room. They stood in the doorway, the sounds of the apartment complex filtering in from the hallway. Someone's television too loud, a baby crying somewhere above them, the smell of dinner cooking. Thank you, Rebecca said quietly, for what you said to her about the promises. I meant every word. I know you did. In this moment, I know you meant it. She paused, struggling with something. It's just hard for me to trust that. Not because of you specifically, but because, well, you were right earlier about my past affecting how I see things. Want to talk about it? Rebecca laughed, but there was no humor in it. Not particularly. But I suppose you deserve some explanation for why I've been such a, she searched for the right word, difficult person to deal with. You haven't been difficult. You've been protective. There's a difference. David's family, Rebecca said abruptly, as if she needed to get the words out before she lost her nerve. After the accident, they promised everything. Help with Lily, financial support, emotional support. They said we were family and they'd never abandon us. For about 6 months, they meant it. They called regularly, visited, sent money to help with bills. She stopped, her jaw working as she fought to keep her emotions in check. "Then what?" George prompted gently. "Then Lily's medical needs got more complicated. The bills piled up. I went back to school to become a nurse, which meant I needed help with childcare. And gradually, the calls got less frequent. The visits stopped. When I asked for help, there was always a reason why they couldn't. David's brother lost his job. His sister was having marriage problems. His parents were dealing with their own health issues. All legitimate reasons, I'm sure. But the message was clear. We were too much trouble. Too expensive. Too emotionally draining. Rebecca, I'm not telling you this for sympathy," she cut him off. "I'm telling you so you understand. The last thing David's mother said to me was, 'You're strong, Rebecca. You'll figure it out.' And she was right. I did figure it out. But I also learned that the only person I can truly count on is myself. Everyone else will let you down eventually." George absorbed this, understanding now the deep well of mistrust he was working against. "Not everyone," he said. "Some people follow through. Some people keep their promises even when it's hard." "Maybe," Rebecca conceded. "But forgive me if I don't just take your word for it. I need to see it." "Fair enough. I'll show you." Over the next 2 weeks, George made sure to do exactly that. He arrived early for each lesson, stayed late answering Lily's endless questions, and sent her practice assignments throughout the week via email that Rebecca could read aloud. He researched songwriting techniques suitable for young learners and came prepared with exercises that would help Lily develop her compositional skills. On his last Tuesday before leaving for Oklahoma, George brought something special, a recording of Lily playing one of the songs they'd worked on, professionally mixed and edited to sound as polished as possible. "I want you to hear what you sound like to other people," he explained, playing the track through his phone's speaker. "When you're playing, you're concentrating so hard on the technical aspects that you might not realize how good you're getting." Lily listened with intense concentration, her head tilted slightly to one side. When the recording ended, there were tears on her cheeks. "That's really me?" she whispered. "That's really you. I sound like a real musician." "You are a real musician, and you're only going to get better from here." Rebecca stood in the kitchen doorway, and George saw her wiping at her own eyes. For the first time since he'd met her, she looked at him without suspicion or guardedness. Just genuine gratitude. After the lesson, as George was saying goodbye, Rebecca stopped him with a hand on his arm. "I was wrong about you," she said simply. "Or at least, I'm starting to think I was. You've been nothing but kind and patient and genuine with Lily, with both of us. And I'm sorry for being so hostile in the beginning. You were protecting your daughter. I understand that. And Rebecca, I want you to know, the video lessons aren't just something I said to make everyone feel better. I've already set them up with my tech guy. Every Tuesday at 2, for as long as Lily wants to keep learning. I'll be there. Even when you're on tour? Even when you're exhausted from shows and traveling? Even then, I made a commitment. I keep my commitments." Rebecca nodded slowly. "Okay, I'm going to choose to believe you. God help me. But I'm going to trust you with my daughter's heart. Just, please don't make me regret it." "I won't," George promised, and standing there in that shabby apartment doorway, looking at a woman who'd been through hell and was finally allowing herself to hope again, he meant it with every fiber of his being. The Oklahoma shows were brutal, not because of the performances, those went well, but because George's mind was constantly in San Antonio, wondering how Lily was doing, whether she was practicing, whether Rebecca was still trusting him, or had reverted to her default skepticism. Tuesday afternoon found him in a hotel room in Tulsa. Laptop set up on the desk, camera adjusted, waiting for the video call to connect. He'd been up since 5 for a morning radio interview, done a sound check at noon, and had a show at 8. The 2 hours between now and then were supposed to be for rest, but he'd blocked them out for Lily instead. The screen flickered, and suddenly he was looking at Lily's face, or more accurately, at her forehead, as she tried to figure out where to look. "Lily, angle the camera down a bit," Rebecca's voice came from off-screen. "There, that's better. Can you see her now, Mr. Strait?" "I can see her perfectly." "Hey there, Lily. How's my star student?" "Mr. Strait." Lily's whole face lit up. "I've been practicing every single day like you said, and I started writing a song. Well, sort of. I have the words, but I'm still working on the melody. Can I play what I have so far?" "That's exactly what I want to hear. Go ahead." What followed was 45 minutes of instruction, correction, encouragement, and genuine teaching. The video format had its challenges. George couldn't physically guide Lily's hands anymore, so he had to be more creative with his verbal instructions. But Lily was adapting well, listening carefully and asking questions when she didn't understand. When the lesson ended, Rebecca came into view of the camera. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes suggesting she'd been working extra shifts. "How do you think she's doing?" Rebecca asked. Honestly, she's progressing faster than I expected. She's got natural rhythm, and she's developing good muscle memory. In another few months, she'll be playing songs that take most students a year to learn." Rebecca smiled, a real smile that transformed her face. "She practices constantly. I have to make her stop so she doesn't overdo it. Music has given her something I couldn't, a sense of purpose, of working towards something positive instead of just surviving day to day." "How are you doing?" George asked. "You look exhausted." Rebecca's smile faded. "I'm fine, just busy. Extra shifts to cover some unexpected expenses. Lily's medical bills? Among other things, but it's nothing I can't handle." The defensive walls started going back up. "We're managing." George wanted to offer help, wanted to ask what unexpected expenses had come up, but he could see Rebecca's body language shifting back to her old wariness. So instead he said, "Well, Lily's doing great. Same time next week?" "Same time," Rebecca confirmed. Over the following weeks, the video lessons became a ritual that George looked forward to. No matter how exhausted he was from performing, no matter what else was happening with the tour, Tuesday at 2 o'clock was sacred. He'd find a quiet space, hotel rooms, tour bus lounges, even once a locked dressing room between sound check and show time, and connect with Lily. The song she was writing evolved slowly. It was about her father, about memories that were fading, but emotions that remained sharp. The lyrics were simple but heartfelt, the melody haunting in its sparseness. George helped her shape it, suggesting chord progressions and rhythmic patterns that would support the emotional weight of her words. "The third verse feels too rushed," George said during their 8th video lesson. "You're packing too many words into the space. Try spreading them out, giving each line room to breathe. Music needs space as much as it needs sound." Lily nodded, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Like pauses?" "Exactly like pauses. Silence is part of the music, too. It gives the listener time to feel what you're saying before you move on to the next thought." As November turned to December, George noticed subtle changes in Rebecca. She started staying visible during the lessons instead of hovering off camera. She asked questions about music theory that went beyond just monitoring Lily's progress. Genuine curiosity about the art form that had become so central to her daughter's life. Once, George caught her humming along to a melody Lily was working on, her expression distant and sad, in a way that suggested she was remembering her late husband. The tour wound through the Midwest, Kansas City, St. Louis, Chicago. George's days blurred together. Hotels, venues, interviews, performances. But Tuesdays remained distinct. Bright points of connection that reminded him why he'd started this in the first place. Then came the Tuesday in mid-December when the video call connected, and George immediately knew something was wrong. Lily's eyes were red from crying, and Rebecca looked like she'd been through a war. "What happened?" George asked without preamble. "We had to put our lesson off this week," Rebecca said, her voice tight. "Lily's not feeling well." "I'm fine, Mom," Lily protested weakly. "I can do the lesson." "You have a fever of 102. You're not doing anything except resting." George could see the tension between them. Lily desperate not to miss their lesson. Rebecca trying to enforce necessary boundaries. "Lily," George said gently, "your mom's right. If you're sick, you need to rest. Music will still be here when you're feeling better. We can do the lesson next week, or even later this week if you're up for it." "But I wanted to show you the finished song," Lily said, tears spilling over. "I finally got it right. The pauses and everything. I wanted you to hear it." George's heart ached for her disappointment. "Tell you what, when you're feeling better, we'll do an extra long lesson. And you can play me the song then, when you're at your best. Deal?" "Deal," Lily agreed reluctantly. After Lily was sent back to bed, Rebecca stayed on the call, her expression troubled. "This is my fault," she said. "I let her practice too much. She stayed up late working on that song, and she wasn't sleeping enough. Her immune system is already compromised, and I should have been more careful." "Rebecca, you can't control everything. Kids get sick, especially in winter. You don't understand. When Lily gets sick, it's not just a cold. Her body doesn't fight off infections the way it should. Last winter, she ended up hospitalized for 3 weeks with pneumonia. I can't let that happen again." The fear in her voice was palpable, and George suddenly understood the weight of responsibility she carried every single day, knowing that a simple illness could spiral into something life-threatening. "What can I do to help?" he asked. "Nothing. There's nothing anyone can do except wait and hope it doesn't get worse." She rubbed her face tiredly. "I already had to call out of work today. Can't afford to do that. But I also can't leave her alone when she's sick. Just one more thing to juggle. Rebecca, I know you don't like accepting help, but don't," she cut him off. "Please don't offer money or solutions or anything else that makes me feel like I'm failing at taking care of my own child. I've got this under control." "I wasn't going to offer money," George said, though that had absolutely been his instinct. "I was going to say that if you need to reschedule other lessons to make up for the work time you're losing, I'm flexible. We can do sessions outside of Tuesday if that helps." Rebecca was quiet for a moment, clearly surprised. That's actually helpful. Thank you." "And Rebecca, you're not failing. You're doing an incredible job under impossible circumstances. Don't let exhaustion convince you otherwise." When the call ended, George sat staring at his laptop screen, thinking about Rebecca's fear, about Lily's disappointment, about how fragile their whole situation was. One illness, one missed shift at work, one unexpected expense. Any of it could tip them into crisis. And despite Rebecca's fierce independence, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were barely holding on. Tom Reynolds found him in the hotel bar an hour later, nursing a beer and looking contemplative. "You're thinking about that family in San Antonio again," Tom said, not a question, but a statement. "How'd you know?" "Because you get this specific look on your face, like you're trying to solve a puzzle you don't have all the pieces for." Tom sat down across from him. "Tell me what's going on." George filled him in on the situation. Lily's illness, Rebecca's precarious financial state, The constant stress of trying to survive on the margins. And before you say it, George added, I know I can't fix everything, but I can help. I want to help. I just can't figure out how to do it in a way that Rebecca won't see as an insult. Tom was quiet, considering. You know what your problem is? You're thinking too big. You're thinking about grand gestures and major interventions. But this Rebecca woman doesn't want grand gestures. She wants respect and autonomy. So, what do you suggest? Small things, consistent things, things that don't make her feel like a charity case, but do make her life a little easier. You're already doing the lessons for free. That's worth hundreds of dollars a week right there. What else could you do that would be helpful without being overwhelming? George thought about it, and gradually an idea began to form. Not a solution to all their problems, but a step forward. Something that might help without making Rebecca feel diminished. The next Tuesday, when they reconnected for the rescheduled lesson, Lily was feeling better and eager to play her finished song. George listened with genuine attention as she worked through it, her fingers finding the chords with increasing confidence, her voice carrying the emotion of the lyrics she'd worked so hard to craft. When she finished, there was silence on both ends of the video call. "Mr. Strait?" Lily asked nervously. "Was it okay?" "It was more than okay, Lily. It was beautiful, genuinely beautiful. You've written something really special here." "Really?" Her face transformed with joy. "You're not just saying that?" "I'm not just saying that. In fact, I have a proposal for you. How would you feel about recording it, properly, in a real studio?" Lily's mouth fell open. From off-camera, George heard Rebecca's sharp intake of breath. But how?" Lily stammered. "We can't afford a studio." "Mom said—" "I have a friend in San Antonio who owns a recording studio," George interrupted. "I called him this week and asked if he'd be willing to donate some studio time for a young, talented musician. He said yes. So if you want to record your song, really record it, with professional equipment, we can make that happen. This week, I happen to have a break in the tour schedule. I'll be back in Texas for a few days. We could do it then. What do you say?" Lily looked toward where her mother stood off-camera. "Mom, can I? Please?" Rebecca moved into view, her expression wary. "Mr. Strait, this is very generous. But it's not generosity. It's recognition of talent. Lily has worked hard on this song, and she deserves to hear what it sounds like when it's properly produced. My friend isn't charging anything because I called in a favor. The only cost is time, and I've got that to spare right now." Rebecca's internal struggle played out on her face, the desire to give her daughter this experience warring with her instinct to refuse anything that felt like charity. "Mom," Lily said softly, "Dad would want me to do this. You know he would." That was apparently the deciding factor. Rebecca's shoulders dropped slightly in surrender. Okay, we can do it. But Lily, you understand this is a special one-time thing, right? This isn't going to become a regular occurrence." "I understand," Lily said quickly. "Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Mr. Strait." The recording session was scheduled for the following Thursday at 1 o'clock. George spent the intervening days preparing, working with the studio engineer to make sure everything would be set up optimally for a visually impaired child, arranging for the session to be as low pressure as possible, even bringing in a session musician friend who could provide backup instrumentation if needed. When Thursday arrived, George met Rebecca and Lily in the parking lot of Sound Forge Studios, a professional facility on San Antonio's north side. Lily was practically vibrating with excitement, clutching her adapted guitar like a lifeline. Rebecca looked nervous, dressed in her nicest clothes. A simple blue dress that was slightly too large for her frame, suggesting recent weight loss. "This is really happening," Lily breathed as they walked toward the entrance. I'm really going to record my song." "You really are," George confirmed, holding the door open for them. The studio was everything professional recording spaces should be. Soundproofed walls, state-of-the-art equipment, comfortable seating areas. George's friend, Marcus Chen, the owner, greeted them warmly. "You must be Lily," Marcus said. "George has told me a lot about you. I hear you've written something special." "I hope so," Lily said shyly. "I'm a little nervous." Every artist gets nervous before recording. It means you care about what you're creating. "Come on, let me show you the recording booth." What followed was 3 hours of patience, encouragement, and musical magic. Lily recorded her song multiple times, each take slightly different. Marcus and George working together to capture the emotion and authenticity of her performance. Rebecca sat in the control room, watching through the glass as her daughter, brave, resilient, talented, created something beautiful out of pain and loss. George watched Rebecca's face as Lily sang about her father, watched tears stream down Rebecca's cheeks as her daughter's voice filled the studio with words like, "I miss your laugh. I miss your smile. I miss the way you made everything worthwhile." When the final take was complete, and they all gathered to listen to the mixed version, there wasn't a dry eye in the control room. Lily's song, raw and honest and achingly beautiful, was everything George had hoped it would be. "That's your voice, baby," Rebecca whispered to Lily. "That's you, sounding like an angel." "Do you think Dad would like it?" Lily asked. "I think Dad would love it. I think he'd be so proud of you, he wouldn't know what to do with himself." On the drive back to their apartment, Rebecca asked George to wait in the parking lot for a moment. She settled Lily inside with instructions to start her homework, then came back down to where George stood by his truck. "I need to say something," she began, her arms wrapped around herself against the December chill. "And I need you to just listen and not argue with me, okay?" "Okay," George agreed cautiously. "What you did today, what you've been doing for Lily these past few months. I've been so focused on protecting us from disappointment that I almost missed something important. You're not trying to save us or fix us. You're just being kind. And I realize now that I've been confusing kindness with pity for so long that I almost pushed away something really valuable." She paused, gathering her thoughts. The parking lot was quiet except for distant traffic noise and the sound of wind rustling through nearby trees. "I spent 2 years believing that accepting help made me weak, that if I couldn't do everything myself, I was failing Lily and dishonoring David's memory. But watching her today, seeing her face when she heard herself on those studio speakers, I realized that my pride was hurting her more than any perceived failure ever could." "Rebecca, let me finish," she said, holding up a hand. "You've kept every promise you made. You've been patient with my hostility, and consistent with Lily's lessons, and generous in ways that never felt like you were trying to make us feel small. And I'm sorry it took me this long to see it, to trust you." George felt something tight in his chest loosen. "I appreciate you saying that, but you don't need to apologize for being protective. You were right to be cautious with someone you didn't know. Maybe. But I also need to learn how to accept help with grace, how to recognize genuine kindness without assuming there's an ulterior motive. And I need to teach Lily that too, that good people exist, that not everyone leaves, that sometimes the world surprises you in positive ways." She looked up at him, and in the fading December light, George saw not just the exhausted, defensive woman he'd first met, but someone who was allowing herself to be vulnerable, to hope. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything you've done for Lily, for us, for not giving up even when I was doing my best to push you away. You're welcome. And Rebecca, You're an incredible mother. Lily's lucky to have you." Rebecca's smile was watery, but genuine. "We're both pretty lucky, I think, even if it took me a while to realize it." Christmas came to San Antonio with unseasonable warmth. Temperatures in the mid-70s that had locals complaining about climate change and tourists rejoicing in their shorts and t-shirts. George had finished his tour obligations and was spending the holidays at his ranch, using the downtime to catch up on rest and spend time with his own family. But on Christmas Eve, he found himself driving into the city, with his truck bed loaded with wrapped presents, feeling simultaneously excited and nervous about showing up unannounced. He'd debated this for weeks. Rebecca had made it clear she didn't want grand gestures or anything that felt like charity. But he'd also seen how sparse their apartment was, how careful Rebecca was about every dollar spent. The idea of Lily having a meager Christmas, while he sat in comfort, felt wrong. So he'd compromised with himself. Modest gifts, nothing ostentatious, wrapped simply. A beginner's music theory workbook adapted for blind students, a set of new guitar strings, a warm winter jacket for Rebecca, because he'd noticed her old one had a broken zipper, and for Lily, something special he'd been working on for weeks. When he knocked on the door at apartment 2C, it took a moment for anyone to answer. Then Rebecca appeared, wearing sweatpants and an old Texas Rangers shirt, her hair in a messy bun. Her eyes widened when she saw George standing there with his arms full of packages. "Mr. Strait? What are you? It's Christmas Eve. Don't you have family?" "I do, and I'll be heading back soon. But I wanted to drop these off first. Is Lily awake?" Before Rebecca could answer, Lily called out from inside, "Mom, who is it?" "It's Mr. Strait, honey." "Mr. Strait." Lily came hurrying down the hallway, her cane tapping rapidly. "Are you really here? I thought you were spending Christmas at your ranch." "I am, but I had some stops to make first. Can I come in?" Rebecca stepped aside, still looking shell-shocked. George set the packages down on their small table and noticed the modest Christmas tree in the corner. A small artificial tree decorated with handmade ornaments and a few strands of lights. Under it were exactly 3 wrapped presents, their paper carefully smoothed and taped, the tags written in Rebecca's neat handwriting. "I know we said no grand gestures," George began, addressing Rebecca directly, "but it's Christmas, and these are just small things I thought you might enjoy. Is it okay if I give them to you now?" Rebecca looked at the packages, then at Lily's hopeful face, then back at George. Finally, she nodded. "It's okay. Thank you. We have something for you too, actually," Lily insisted. Lily hurried to the tree and retrieved a small package wrapped in Sunday comics. "We didn't have regular wrapping paper," she explained, "but Mom said the comics would work just as well. I hope you like it." George opened the package carefully to find a hand-knitted scarf in dark blue wool. It was slightly uneven in places, clearly made by someone still learning the craft. But the effort and care that had gone into it was obvious. "I made it," Lily said proudly. "Well, Mom helped a lot, but I did most of the stitches. She taught me how to knit because it's something I can do without seeing. It took me 3 months." George wrapped the scarf around his neck, feeling the warmth of it, the weight of what it represented. Hours of work from a child who had very little to give, but wanted to give anyway. "It's perfect," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "Thank you, Lily. And you too, Rebecca." "Lily did most of the work," Rebecca said softly. She was very determined. They spent the next hour opening presents. Lily exclaimed over the music theory book, running her fingers over the Braille text with delight. Rebecca protested about the jacket, but George could see how pleased she was when she tried it on, and it fit perfectly. And then came the special gift, a CD in a simple case with Lily's name embossed in both regular text and Braille. "What is it?" Lily asked, her fingers exploring the case. "It's your song," George explained. "The one we recorded. Marcus put together a proper master and made a few copies. This one's for you to keep. But I also sent one to David's parents. I hope that's okay," he added, looking at Rebecca. Rebecca's hand went to her mouth. "You sent my in-laws a recording of Lily singing? I thought they might want to hear it. Lily told me they used to be close before things got difficult. I figured maybe this could be a bridge, a way to remind them what they're missing. But I thought you understood how they—" Rebecca stopped, emotions playing across her face. Anger, hope, fear, all warring for dominance. "I understand they hurt you," George said gently, "but I also know that people sometimes need a reminder of what really matters. And sometimes they need a reason to swallow their pride and reach out. This song is that reason. What they do with it is up to them." Lily was quiet, holding her CD case close to her chest. "Do you think they'll listen to it?" she asked in a small voice. "Do you think they'll remember me?" "Oh, baby." Rebecca knelt down beside her daughter, pulling her into a tight hug. "They never forgot you. They got lost in their own problems. But Mr. Strait's right. Maybe this will help them find their way back." After presents were exchanged and Lily was settled in the living room listening to her recording on repeat, Rebecca walked George out to the parking lot. The evening air was still warm, carrying the scent of someone's barbecue and the sound of children playing with new toys in a nearby courtyard. "I should be angry with you," Rebecca said, "for contacting David's family without asking me first." "Are you?" She considered this. "No, surprisingly, I'm not. Maybe a few months ago I would have been. But now I think maybe you're right. Maybe they need a reminder. And maybe Lily deserves a chance to have her grandparents in her life again. I hope it works out. But even if it doesn't, you and Lily have each other. And you have people who care about you. Dr. Coleman, Marcus at the studio, me. You're not as alone as you think you are." Rebecca smiled, and it was the most open, genuine expression George had seen from her. "I'm starting to realize that. It's strange. For 2 years, I convinced myself that being alone was the same as being strong. But actually, letting people in, that takes more strength than pushing them away. Your daughter knows that," George observed. "She's been trying to teach you all along." "Yeah, 9 years old and wiser than her mother. That's my Lily." Rebecca paused, then said, "George, can I call you George instead of Mr. Strait? I think we're past formalities at this point. I'd like that. George, then. I want you to know that what you've done for us goes way beyond teaching Lily to play guitar. You've given her confidence, purpose, joy, and you've taught me that accepting help doesn't make me weak. It makes me smart enough to recognize good things when they're offered." "Rebecca, let me finish. You've also become someone my daughter trusts completely, someone she talks about constantly, someone she looks up to and wants to make proud. That's a big responsibility, and I need to know that you understand that." George met her eyes directly. "I do understand, and I take it seriously." "Good, because here's the thing. You're not just Lily's guitar teacher anymore. Whether we planned it or not, you've become part of our lives, part of our family in a way. And that means I need to be able to count on you not just for lessons, but for being there, for being consistent, for being someone Lily can trust won't disappear when things get hard or inconvenient." "I'm not going anywhere," George promised. "Even when I'm on tour, even when I'm busy, I'll be there for Lily. And for you." Rebecca nodded, blinking back tears. Okay, I'm choosing to believe you. I'm choosing to trust that this," she gestured between them, encompassing everything that had happened over the past months, "is real and lasting. So don't make me regret it." "I won't." They stood in the parking lot for a moment longer, the sound of Lily's recorded voice drifting faintly from the apartment above them, singing about loss and love and memory. Then Rebecca surprised George by stepping forward and hugging him quickly, awkwardly, but genuinely. "Merry Christmas, George," she said. "And thank you for everything." "Merry Christmas, Rebecca. Give Lily my love." As George drove back toward his ranch, his new scarf still wrapped around his neck despite the warm evening, he thought about families and how they're made. Not always by blood or marriage, but sometimes by choice and circumstance, and the decision to show up for someone who needs you. His phone rang as he pulled onto the highway. Tom Reynolds. "Please tell me you're on your way home and not still in San Antonio playing Santa Claus to that family." George laughed. "I'm on my way home. Playing Santa is done for the night." "Good, because I've got news. Remember that benefit concert we talked about for children's hospitals? The organizers want you to headline. It's in February, San Antonio Memorial Hospital specifically. Thought you might be interested given your personal connection there." George's mind started working immediately. A benefit concert at the hospital where he'd first met Lily. An opportunity to do something meaningful while also supporting the place that was caring for so many children. "I'm interested," he said. "Send me the details." "Will do. And George, whatever's happening with that family in San Antonio, with the blind girl and her stubborn mother, I hope it works out the way you want it to." "Me too, Tom. Me too." New Year's Eve found George at his ranch, celebrating quietly with his own family. But his mind kept drifting to San Antonio. He wondered how Rebecca and Lily were spending the evening, whether they were warm enough in their small apartment, whether Lily was practicing her guitar or writing new songs. At midnight, as fireworks exploded over the Texas landscape and his family toasted the new year, George sent a text to Rebecca. "Happy New Year. Tell Lily I'm proud of her progress and excited for what the coming year will bring." The response came 20 minutes later. She says, "Happy New Year to you too, and she can't wait for Tuesday's lesson. From me, thank you for giving us something to look forward to. This year already feels brighter." The Tuesday lessons continued through January, each one building on the last. Lily's skills developed rapidly, her fingers finding chords with increasing speed and accuracy, her understanding of music theory deepening, her confidence growing with each song she mastered. She'd started writing more songs too, not just about her father, but about other things. Her friendship with a girl from her tutoring group, the way rain sounded against her window, her mother's laugh when she was genuinely happy. George found himself looking forward to these sessions more than almost anything else in his schedule. There was something pure about teaching Lily, about watching her discover the joy and power of creating music. She didn't have any of the cynicism or jaded attitudes that sometimes came with professional musicians. For her, music was magic, and every lesson was an adventure. In mid-January, something unexpected happened. Rebecca's phone rang during a lesson, and George heard her sharp intake of breath when she looked at the caller ID. "It's David's mother," she said, her voice tight with tension. I need to take this." She disappeared into her bedroom, and Lily sat quietly on the couch, her guitar forgotten in her lap. "Are they calling because of my song?" she asked George. "I think so, yes. What if they didn't like it? What if they're mad that I recorded something about Dad without asking them?" "I doubt they're mad, Lily. If anything, I think they're probably moved by it. Your song is beautiful and honest. Anyone who hears it, can feel how much you love your father." They waited in tense silence until Rebecca emerged 15 minutes later. Her eyes were red from crying, but her expression was complicated. Not quite happy, but not devastated either. Something in between. "They want to see you," she told Lily. "Your grandparents, Aunt Michelle, and Uncle Paul. They're coming to San Antonio next weekend, and they want to take us to dinner." Lily's face lit up with hope and fear in equal measure. "Really? They really want to see me?" "They really do. Your grandmother, she said she's been listening to your song on repeat since George sent it. She said it made her realize how much time they've wasted being stupid and proud." Her words, not mine. "So they're not mad?" "They're not mad. They're sorry. And they want to try to make things right." Lily launched herself at her mother, wrapping her arms around Rebecca's waist and bursting into tears. "I miss them so much, Mom. I tried not to say anything because I knew it hurt you, but I missed them so much." "I know, baby. I know you did. And I'm sorry I let my own hurt get in the way of you having a relationship with them. That wasn't fair to you." George quietly gathered his things, preparing to give them privacy for what was clearly a significant family moment. But before he could leave, Rebecca stopped him. "Wait, George, this is because of you. Because you sent that CD and gave them a reason to reach out. I want you to know that even though I'm nervous about seeing them again, even though I'm not sure how this is all going to work out, I'm grateful. You've given Lily the chance to have her family back. That's an incredible gift." "I just provided the opportunity," George said. "You and Lily did the hard work of creating something worth sharing." The following weekend, George received a long text from Rebecca. Dinner went well. Emotional? Complicated? But good. David's parents apologized for everything. The distance, the broken promises, their failure to be there when we needed them. They want to be part of Lily's life again. Really part of it. Not just occasionally when it's convenient. They offered to help with medical bills, with everyday expenses, with whatever we need. I'm still processing it all. Still not entirely sure I can trust it. But Lily was so happy to see them. She hasn't stopped talking about it. Whatever happens from here, at least we tried. At least the door is open again. Thank you for making that possible." George smiled at his phone, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the Texas sun. Sometimes things actually worked out. Sometimes people did the right thing. Sometimes hope wasn't foolish. The benefit concert in February was everything George had hoped it would be. The arena was packed, the audience enthusiastic, the performances by various artists all top-notch. George headlined, performing his biggest hits and some deeper cuts that showcased his range as an artist. But the highlight of the evening came when he brought a special guest on stage. "I want to tell you all about someone special I met a few months ago," George said to the crowd, his voice carrying through the arena's sound system. "Her name is Lily Anderson. She's 10 years old, she's blind, and she's one of the most talented young musicians I've ever had the privilege of teaching." The spotlight shifted to reveal Lily walking onto the stage, guided by Rebecca. Lily wore a pretty blue dress and carried her adapted guitar. Her face a mixture of terror and excitement as 20,000 people applauded her entrance. Lily wrote a song about her father, who passed away a few years ago. George continued, "It's honest and beautiful and deeply personal. And she's agreed to perform it tonight, with her mother's blessing and my accompaniment. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Lily Anderson." What followed was one of the most moving performances George had ever been part of. Lily's voice, small but clear, filled the arena as she sang about love and loss and memory. George played backup guitar, keeping the accompaniment simple, so Lily's voice and lyrics could shine through. And when she reached the final verse, "You're gone but not forgotten. You're missed but still so near. In every song I'm singing, Dad, I know that you can hear." There wasn't a dry eye in the house. The standing ovation lasted for 5 minutes. Lily stood on stage, tears streaming down her face, holding her guitar and seeming overwhelmed by the response. Rebecca stood in the wings, openly weeping, one hand pressed to her mouth. Backstage afterward, they were mobbed by well-wishers, other performers, concert staff, even some audience members who'd managed to get past security. Everyone wanted to tell Lily how beautiful her performance was, how moving her song had been, how brave she was. But the moment that mattered most came later, when they were finally alone in a quiet dressing room. Lily sat on a couch between George and Rebecca, still clutching her guitar, still processing what had just happened. "Did I really do that?" she asked in a small voice. "Did I really just perform in front of all those people?" "You really did," George confirmed. "And you were incredible." "Dad would have loved it," Rebecca added, her voice thick with emotion. "He would have been so proud of you, baby. I know I am." Lily turned her face toward George, and even though she couldn't see him, he felt the weight of her attention, the significance of what she was about to say. "Mr. Strait, George, I want you to know that you changed my life. Before I met you, I was just a blind girl who listened to music. Now, I'm a musician. I'm someone who creates things, someone who has something to give to the world, and that's because of you." George felt his throat tighten. "Lily, you had that in you all along. I just helped you find it. Maybe, but you also showed me that good things can happen, that people keep their promises, that even when bad things happen to you, there are still people who will help you find the good again." She paused, then added shyly, "Is it okay if I think of you kind of like a second dad? Not to replace my real dad, but as someone who's important to me in that way?" George looked at Rebecca, who was crying silently, nodding her permission. Then he pulled Lily into a hug. This brave, talented, beautiful child who'd taught him as much as he'd taught her. "It's more than okay," he said. "I'd be honored." And there, in a dressing room in San Antonio, surrounded by the aftermath of triumph and the promise of a future that looked brighter than any of them had expected, 3 people who'd been brought together by chance and bound together by choice became something more than teacher and student, more than helper and helped. They became family. 6 months later, George sat in the audience at a small music school recital in San Antonio. Lily was performing again, this time playing a challenging classical piece she'd been working on for weeks. She'd started taking formal lessons at the school, paid for partly by her grandparents and partly by a scholarship program George had quietly arranged through his foundation. Rebecca sat beside him, looking healthier and happier than she had when they'd first met. David's family had followed through on their promises, helping with bills and childcare, and all the everyday support that made life manageable instead of a constant crisis. Rebecca had been able to cut back to one job and was even talking about taking some college courses to advance her nursing career. "She's really doing it," Rebecca whispered as Lily played, her fingers moving confidently across the frets. "She's actually becoming the musician she always dreamed of being." "She was always going to become it," George replied. "She just needed someone to believe in her." "We both did," Rebecca said softly. "Believe in her and believe in us. Thank you for being that someone, George. Thank you for not giving up on us even when I was doing everything I could to push you away. You weren't pushing me away. You were protecting your daughter. There's a difference. Maybe. But I'm glad you saw past my defenses to what was underneath. I'm glad you were stubborn enough to keep showing up." When Lily's performance ended and the audience applauded, she stood and took a small bow, her face radiant with pride and accomplishment. Her grandparents were there in the front row, cheering loudly. Her tutor sat 2 rows behind them, beaming. And Dr. Coleman from the hospital had come, bringing several nurses from the pediatric wing to support their favorite patient. But when Lily finished bowing and turned her face toward where she knew George and her mother were sitting, her smile was specifically for them, for the people who'd walked with her through darkness into light, who'd believed in her when she struggled to believe in herself, who'd shown her that love and support and genuine kindness were real and lasting. After the recital, as they all stood in the parking lot saying goodbyes and making plans for celebration dinners, Lily pulled George aside. "I have something to tell you," she said, her voice serious. "I've been working on a new song. It's called The Man Who Taught Me to See. It's about you, about how you helped me learn that being blind doesn't mean I can't create beautiful things, about how you showed me what it means to keep promises and be there for people who need you." George felt tears prick his eyes. "Lily, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know that you changed everything for me. For Mom, too. You gave us hope when we'd forgotten what that felt like. And I'll never forget that. No matter where life takes us, no matter what happens, I'll never forget what you did for us." "The feeling's mutual," George said, pulling her into a hug. "You've changed my life too, kiddo. You've reminded me what really matters. And I'll never forget that either." As the sun set over San Antonio, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and gold, George Strait stood in a parking lot with a family that wasn't his by blood, but was his by choice, and felt a sense of rightness that went deeper than any professional success or critical acclaim ever had. He'd come to a hospital 6 months ago to brighten some kids' days, expecting nothing more than to sign some autographs and share some smiles. Instead, he'd found Lily Anderson and her mother Rebecca, 2 people who'd been through hell but were fighting their way back to joy. 2 people who'd needed help but hadn't known how to accept it. 2 people who'd become, against all odds and despite all obstacles, 2 of the most important people in his life. Sometimes the best things happen when you're not looking for them. Sometimes the most meaningful connections come from the most unexpected places. Sometimes what starts as a simple act of kindness becomes something far more significant, a bond that changes everyone involved for the better. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, a chance encounter with a blind girl who loves to sing becomes the beginning of a story about trust, family, and the transformative power of believing in someone when they need it most. George had wanted to help. What he hadn't expected was that in helping Lily and Rebecca, he would be helped in return, reminded of what matters, grounded in purpose, connected to something more meaningful than fame or fortune. He'd only wanted to help a blind girl learn guitar. He'd never expected to be caught so completely off guard by the unexpected reaction of her mother, by the journey they would take together, by the family they would become. But looking at Lily now, confident and talented and full of joy, and at Rebecca, healthy and trusting and allowing herself to hope again, he knew that getting caught off guard by Rebecca's reaction had been the best surprise of his life. 1 year after their first meeting, George received a package in the mail. Inside was a handwritten letter from Lily, transcribed by Rebecca since Lily couldn't write in traditional script, and a CD labeled Songs from the Heart by Lily Anderson. The letter read, "Dear George, Mom is writing this for me, but the words are all mine. I wanted to tell you about something amazing that happened. Do you remember how you always said that music could open doors? Well, you were right. A music producer heard my recording from the benefit concert and reached out. He wants to help me make an album of my songs. Not because I'm blind and it would be a good story, but because he thinks my music is good enough to stand on its own. Mom made sure of that before we agreed to anything. I'm going to record 10 songs over the next year. Some about Dad, some about other things, all from my heart. And I want you to be part of it, if you can. Not as my teacher anymore, but as my friend, as family. I've been thinking a lot about the day we met at the hospital. I was so sad that day. I felt like my life was just about surviving, about getting through each day without Dad. But then you heard me sing, and you saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. You gave me the chance to become more than just a blind girl who lost her father. You helped me become Lily Anderson, musician. Lily Anderson, songwriter. Lily Anderson, someone who creates beauty in the world. Mom wants you to know that she's sorry it took her so long to trust you. She says to tell you that you proved her wrong about people, and she's grateful for that. She's even dating someone now, a teacher at my music school. She says it's because you taught her that it's okay to let people in, that not everyone will hurt you. Grandma and Grandpa take us to dinner every Sunday now. Uncle Paul teaches me chess using a special tactile board. Aunt Michelle is learning Braille so she can write me letters. Our family is healing, and it's partly because of you. Because you sent them my song and reminded them what really matters. I know you're busy with your career and your own family, but I hope you'll always be part of our lives. I hope you'll come to my album release party. I hope you'll keep teaching me things, even if it's not just about music anymore. You told me once that talent and skill are different things, but that both matter. You taught me the skills. But more importantly, you taught me that I deserved to develop my talent, that being blind didn't mean I couldn't create something beautiful. You taught Mom that accepting help isn't weakness. You taught both of us that promises can be kept, and that good people exist in the world. Thank you for being our family, George. Thank you for not giving up on us. Thank you for showing us that even after the worst things happen, beautiful things can still grow. With love and gratitude, Lily. George read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down his face before he even listened to the CD. When he finally did, he heard Lily's voice, stronger now, more confident, but still carrying that authentic emotion that had first caught his attention. 10 songs of hope and healing, of memory and moving forward, of a young girl finding her voice in more ways than one. He called Rebecca immediately. "Did you get the package?" she asked, already knowing the answer from the emotion in his voice. "I did. And yes, I'll be there for the recording sessions, for the album release, for whatever else you and Lily need. Always." "I know you will," Rebecca said simply. "That's who you are. That's who you've always been, even when I was too stubborn to see it." "How are things with the new boyfriend?" George asked, changing the subject slightly. Rebecca laughed. "His name is Daniel, and he's wonderful. Patient with Lily, understanding about my baggage, and he makes me laugh. First person since David who's made me feel like maybe I could have a future that includes someone else. I'm happy for you, Rebecca. You deserve that. We all do. Happiness, hope, second chances. You taught me that, George. You and Lily both." The album release party was held at SoundForge Studios, where Lily had recorded her first song. Friends and family filled the control room and the recording space, celebrating not just the album, but everything it represented. Healing, growth, resilience, and the power of believing in yourself and others. George stood with his arm around Lily's shoulders as Marcus Chen played the album through the studio's speakers. Each song was a testament to Lily's journey, from grief to hope, from isolation to connection, from simply surviving to truly living. When the final track ended, "The Man Who Taught Me to See," Lily turned to George with tears on her cheeks. "Did you like it?" she asked, suddenly vulnerable, despite the room full of people celebrating her achievement. "I loved it," George said honestly. "Every single song, but especially that last one. Though I have to tell you, you're the one who taught me to see. You showed me what courage really looks like, what resilience means, what it means to take the worst thing that ever happened to you and transform it into something beautiful." Rebecca joined them, Daniel by her side, her in-laws clustered nearby, Dr. Coleman and several nurses from the hospital standing with Marcus. A whole community of people who'd been brought together by one brave little girl and the music she'd found inside herself. "I want to say something," Lily announced, and the room fell silent. "A year ago, I thought my life was basically over. Not literally, but kind of. I couldn't see. I'd lost my dad. Mom was working so hard she barely had time to breathe, and I felt like I was just taking up space in the world, not really contributing anything. Then I met George Strait, and he heard me sing one song and told me I had talent. Real talent. And he kept showing up week after week, even when it was hard, even when I was frustrated, even when Mom was, well, less than welcoming." Rebecca laughed through her tears. "That's one way to put it. He kept his promises," Lily continued, "all of them. And he taught me that I could do more than just survive. I could create, I could contribute, I could make something beautiful that would help other people the way music helped me. This album exists because George believed in me. But more than that, I exist. The real me, the musician me, the confident me, because he showed me it was possible. So this album is dedicated to him, to the man who taught me to see with my heart instead of my eyes, to the man who became family when we needed family most, to George Strait." The room erupted in applause, and George found himself surrounded by embraces and congratulations, overwhelmed by the love and gratitude being expressed. But his eyes kept drifting to Lily, standing proud and tall, her guitar in her hands, her face glowing with accomplishment and joy. This was why music mattered. Not the fame or the fortune or the sold-out shows, though those were nice. Music mattered because it connected people, because it healed wounds and built bridges and gave voice to emotions that were too big for regular words. Music mattered because it could transform a grieving, blind little girl into a confident young musician with an album and a future and hope for what came next. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, music brought you a family you never expected, but desperately needed. A fierce, wounded mother who taught you about resilience, and a talented child who reminded you what it meant to believe in the impossible. George had only wanted to help a little girl learn guitar. He'd been caught completely off guard by her mother's reaction, by Rebecca's hostility and distrust, by the walls she'd built to protect her daughter and herself. But he'd persevered. He'd shown up. He'd kept his promises. And in doing so, he'd gained something more valuable than any number of platinum records or industry awards. He'd gained a family. And he'd been reminded that sometimes the most important things we do aren't the grand gestures or the public performances, but the quiet, consistent acts of showing up for people who need us, believing in them when they struggle to believe in themselves, and refusing to give up even when the path forward isn't clear. As the party continued around him, George looked at Rebecca, happy and healing, and at Lily, thriving and confident, and felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for what he'd been able to give them, but for what they'd given him in return: purpose, connection, a reminder of what truly mattered, and the knowledge that sometimes, when you open your heart to help someone else, you end up being helped in ways you never imagined. The little girl who'd only wanted to learn guitar had taught him the most important lesson of all, that family isn't just about blood or obligation, but about showing up, keeping promises, and choosing to love the people who need it most. And that was a lesson worth learning, no matter how unexpected the journey to get there.